Reserve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of America.
I'm Thomas Salmons. This is year 0. Today, I have Tyler Janke from the Libertarian Pod Review podcast joining me. Tyler is a family law attorney, so I thought it would be interesting to have him on and discuss that aspect of his life and of the law a little bit. We also get into the culture surrounding family and what we see as ideal moving forward in shifting the culture of the United States and how to get there. I think you're going to really enjoy this. We did have a little bit of connection issues towards the beginning. I lost connection for some reason. My computer disconnected from my hotspot and jumped back on my Wi-Fi, which caused problems. And as I was getting it reconnected to my hotspot, it dropped for, 15, 20 seconds, something like that. So there is going to be this little lag in there from that. But otherwise, it was a very great conversation, and it went smoothly after that. So hopefully that's not too distracting for y'all. I always talk about RyanBunting.com, but RyanBunting.com also has another website called AutonomyVirtual.com. This is Ryan Bunting's independent services. He does everything from data entry, back-end administration, and software consultation to graphic design, book editing, to jumpstart your project with combined 30 plus years of experience. He will save you time and money and let you focus on what's most important, your own journey and autonomy. So go to Autonomy Virtual or RyanBunting.com if you need a virtual assistant, administrative work done virtually. You can't afford to hire somebody full time? Well, you can hire him by the hour or through pre-existing packages that he has put together. So go to Autonomy Virtual and RyanBunting.com and pit them against each other because they're two sides of the same coin. One of them is racist. LibertarianInstitute.org is holding its fund drive right now. So go over to the LibertarianInstitute.org and hit that donate button. We depend on all of you participating and giving us your money so that we can keep the lights on and keep writers and podcasters moving forward and doing the things that they do and all of the deep research and work that they put out there for you. So go to libertarianinstitute.org, check out all the great writers, and give us your money at the libertarianinstitute.org/donate. Thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. Enjoy the show. Okay, I am here with Tyler Janke. What's going on, man?
How you doing, Tommy? Good to finally meet you virtually.
Yeah, no doubt. I had told you last year. I was like, man, I appreciate you putting my podcast up and spreading the word. And I kind of don't want to have you on the podcast because I don't want to become friendly. And then now you're doing favors for a friend. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But I've also decided it's so easy to just to take on someone and rip their show apart. And what I've really been doing, when I kind of even assess it more, is I like presenting shows that I enjoy, right? So, but I also am trying to branch out and find new ones. And I just don't really find it, actually, it was your show. You had Dan Smots on. There was another episode where you had, I think, Adam, and you guys were talking about, or maybe it was with Reed, and there was something about, you were talking about positive things in the libertarian community, and being like for other people and all that kind of thing, and that's what you've done that to me online. Josh is that, a bunch of people, and so I prefer to maybe go a little more positive route. So we can be friends, Tommy, and I'm still gonna talk good about your show or bad, but I'm gonna present it out. I like to push different people's ideas. I think that's the positive thing.
Oh, it's fair to criticize me. I'm just a guy.
Well,
I'm definitely not right all the time. I know that.
No, and that's perfectly fine. And I should probably always learn how to do that constructively. We may have differing opinions on facial hair. That's we'll start there, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that goes back a long ways. So.
I'm not going to change you. Don't worry.
I'm a Zach Wild guy.
Yeah, I like it.
But no. What I do like is that you're bringing attention to other shows, and I think, and I've always said, like, start your own podcast. If you want to do something, do it. Like, who cares? I don't look at it as competition, because we're not competing with each other. We're competing with the corporate media.
Yeah.
Right. And so let's say I'm getting some odd thousand downloads, but I'm not meeting CNN's downloads. I'm just not doing it. But maybe between me, Pete, Dave, Scott, Keith Knight, and Patrick McFarland, maybe we are competing with CNN together, right?
Yeah.
And we're putting that much out there. So it's not about like promoting me. I'm perfectly happy doing what I'm doing and at the position I'm at, and I'm enjoying myself. Right. If I weren't enjoying it, if I didn't like the conversations, then I wouldn't have them. I have other things to do.
Right. I don't even know so much about promoting someone. It's giving them an idea of here's an example. Like give you a clip. You're on a show. You have an interesting conversation with someone, and check it out or don't. But that's kind of what I've been doing is trying to highlight different people that maybe you did or didn't know about. And for me, that's also a journey too, because I have my little set people, and I kind of want to branch out from that. So then I found you, and obviously the Libertarian Institute. I'm a big fan of everything you guys do there. So now I had Keith on, I had Patrick on, now I'm on with you, and pretty honored. So
yeah, no, and what you find out is, if you spend any time around any of these guys, whether it's the Timeline Earth faction or, Tower Power Hour guys or Slurp Gang guys, Pete, any of these guys, Scott, they're all just average guys. They're all just good guys. And so I don't have to agree with everybody 100% of the time to say, hey, like, my dude here is doing good work. If I agree with you 95% of the time and we disagree 5% of the time, why the hell am I going to focus on that 5% of the time?
Well, but then you wouldn't be slumming it in the libertarian spaces. I mean, we focus on the differences so much, I think, and I think it's because there's new things going on out there today. And even I've taken on, and I have a lot that I love about, like the Pete Quinones, the post-libertarian people, Buck Johnson as an example, and I don't actually lump Buck into what I'm going to say next, but some of the messaging has bothered me. And it's the same way going the other direction, right? If you don't like what they say, it's so easy to shitpost on everyone online, and maybe we're just in our little cauldron, in our little space there, so tight that the reality is, you get out, Pete or Buck are talking to Mom and Joe, mom and pop people out in the street, and it's much different than our little Twitter sphere. So.
Yeah, I think it might be different for me too, because I know these guys. And so I see what people are saying, and I'm like, well, no. I mean, yeah, I get that what he said triggered you, but what he said did not mean that. That's not what it meant, right? So it's a lot of it is attributing your own intent to them. And it's like, you can't attribute intentions to somebody else. That's a perfect way to really screw up an argument is by attributing intentions. And so that's why, like, when I did my, let's say, take my podcast the other day, whenever I was, what is the New World Order, right? It'd be very easy for me to come out and just go full Alex Jones. And it's like, these are child molesting, pedophiles, like that would be so easy to do. But I'm like, no, okay, let's just say like they have the best intentions. They're not nefarious in any way. And all these consequences are just unforeseen. But what are we looking at going forward is not getting any better, right? Even if the intentions are good. Let's say I don't listen to somebody advocating for Medicare for all and think they want to kill grandma. Like that's just not the way I look at it. I'm like, okay, they obviously don't have the education in this particular field to understand what this means. And so instead of talking down to them and shit posting at them, I would rather have a conversation with them. And if we get to a position where I don't feel like we can have an honest conversation, I'll just stop talking to you. I'm like, okay, like this isn't going anywhere. I don't want to have it. I'm not going to have this conversation anymore, because now we're talking in circles or talking past each other. And if you're as a podcaster, I look at it this way. It's my job to figure out how not to talk past people, how to talk directly to that individual. So if I'm talking past my guest, then I have to back up and say, hold up. And we need to define some terms so that we're on the same page so that we can then have the same conversation going forward. It's not their job to cater to me. I invited you into my house. I'm going to be a good and gracious host. And therefore I'm going to cater to your level and what you are talking about. And I'm going to try to understand it to the best of my ability, whether I agree or not. And I've had some guys on my show that I don't agree with 100%, but we're still friends. I don't have a problem calling them friends, and that's what's missing. And I think that's a lack of maturity in some of it. I think another part of it is everybody's identity is online now. You're not talking to a real person in real life. Yeah. You're not taking the risk of getting punched in the fucking mouth. Right. So, I mean, that could make a big difference.
It is. And then there's this, you started out about everyone having a podcast, which, so I grew up in the era of, talk radio, just absolutely loved it, sports radio, and then politics and all that stuff. So the podcast is just a different form of you maybe being having that radio show yourself, or being the caller, able to flush out ideas. So you see someone, you're shit posting online, and if you're not able to, you said talk past the guests and such. If you're not doing that, you're not going to get the downloads, and you're not going to have the great thing. But that's what I love about, I think, the podcast idea. And part of the problem, I'm still kind of going through all this stuff, is you're online and you make a tweet, right? It's real simple. It's 140 characters.
There we go. So we're still recording.
Oh,
there.
Yeah, I think I lost you a little bit, and then you lost me.
Yeah. For some reason, my internet disconnected there for a second, and I was sitting here jacking with it, trying to get it to reconnect.
I was like, he's got a stoic look on his face, and I lost him.
Yeah. It was the internet.
That's probably best. It was one of my worst comments I've had, so
okay.
Can't believe it.
Well, we'll cut that part out. So,
yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about like giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And
huge.
Trying to have this conversation, because I don't when I engage with somebody, until I understand where they're coming from, I don't identify them as enemy, right? So I have this really particular kind of idea in my head as to what my goal is and who I'm combating. And it is the people that draw the narrative. Now, if people are just spewing the mainstream narrative, I try to figure out why they're saying it, because maybe they don't understand what they're saying, but if they're just unwilling to waver on that narrative, then I just like, okay, you're either a useful idiot or you're part of the cabal, and I don't have to deal with you. But when it comes to people like a Pete or a Buck, these guys, when I talk to them, I may not agree with them. I can guarantee you that Pete and I don't agree 100% on everything, but we have a really, I'd say we have a mutual respect for each other, and we really genuinely like and care for each other. Right. And that's, I mean, I think that's years of being in communications with each other too. I mean, that's part of it. So if I have the conversation with somebody like Pete and he says something that I don't necessarily think is right, or it kind of takes me off guard, I'm going to ask him what it means, because I have that respect for him and I understand he's not an evil person and he doesn't have evil intent. So I'm like, okay, what do you think this will accomplish? Right? Like, so why are we doing it this way? So you have to, as a podcast host, it is my job to not talk past my guest, to talk in line with my guest and to have a conversation with my guest so that the audience can hear what the guest has to say and make determinations based upon facts and opinions that the guest puts out there.
Yeah, completely. So I didn't even, maybe this is where I got cut off. I was kind of joining in on that portion. I don't know why we bring in Pete's a fascinating guy. Okay. And he's changed his mind over and over, evolving. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So what's so interesting about Pete is, I had him on my show early and we had a conversation and he was great and very generous and nice to me when he didn't have to be. But I think some people are super smart and they're witty and he can trash people on Twitter. And so I think you have this dichotomy of this opposing views of how he can be on Twitter and then probably how he is in real life. I haven't met him in real life. And he's an amazingly effective person on both sides. I think it would be great to be friends with Pete personally, like to just know him and to be, I'd probably have a little bit of different ideas of him as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know what this has to do with anything other than we were talking about Pete and then talking about people. And I think, he's got a great way of showing his abilities of communicating online and with the podcast. And,
to be fair, I'm just using Pete as an example.
Yeah, and I'm kind of trying to defend him in a sense because I brought him up too.
A lot of heat.
I know, but actually, without trying to drag, and I'm trying to drag him, I'm just saying there's differences of people online and Twitter, and then with their podcast. And the great thing about the podcast is the ability to have the long form and to express your ideas, and you feel like you know him. Right. Which to me is I'm that way too. You get to know me, you see me in the podcast and I do this, I have guest spots and then I may say something completely outlandish in 140 some characters online and blow everything, all the respect you had for me. So. Well,
I mean, the way that somebody like a Pete or an Aaron or a neocon remover or El Pulpo view Twitter is different than the way like I would view Twitter. I mean, they have a completely different. I laugh at Pete all the time, and I tell him, I'm like, dude, I still haven't learned to use Twitter the way you do. I just don't understand what the hell you're doing there. But it's just the way they view the character limit and the way that it's lined out, and so. They view it almost as a war zone. Yeah. And you're drawing lines. And I don't necessarily view it that way. Like the way I view social media, and I'm not really, I have a Facebook account, but I don't get on it. So if you've tried to friend me on Facebook, it's nothing personal. I'm just not on. I haven't been on that damn thing in over a year. But the way I view Twitter is it's a platform for me to spread my show and kind of ask questions and try to figure things out. And so I might throw out a phrase or a comment and see what kind of response I get to it, because then that helps me kind of like fine tune my thinking. Maybe somebody will say something that I'm like, oh, wait, I didn't
Yeah.
think of that aspect. I can kind of pull that in. And so it's really hard to do that with 280 characters or whatever it is. Sometimes I have to like think on a tweet for 2 or 3 days before I can figure out how to word it down so it'll fit, so that it can be, minute enough. Cause I don't do threads. I'm not going to sit there and throw up a thread.
Right.
No, like if you wanted to read an essay, I'll put it on my Substack. You can read an essay. I'm not going to do it that way. So I'm going to try to figure out how to summarize my thoughts and put it up on Twitter, and then see the response I get. And based upon that response, I can kind of fine tune where this thought is going, because that's how I work through my thoughts. I talk about it. I'm like, okay, like I'm kind of having this idea. I'm kind of seeing this pattern. There's this idea here. Like, am I missing something? And when people come in and try to correct me, then I'll kind of maybe go back and forth with them, not to be argumentative, but just trying to work that out. I'm just trying to flesh out what it is that I'm identifying.
Yeah, some of my best tweets have actually been ones where I've started the idea and I just put it in my, you don't have to, that's the problem you have too. When I used to do with Twitter, it's like, I have this idea, I got to put it out now. And it's like, not really. It's not, something to be evergreen. So I'd put them in my drafts, and then I'd kind of look back at it later and I'd change a few things. And then all of a sudden something just clicks and you've got the perfect ending. And then those are the ones for me that have been, like much better and much more explosive, or they kind of resonate. And so I think Pete and those guys are more of, they just, something comes, neocon remover and Popo probably to the most, something comes in their mind and they just throw it out there, and it's a banger from the get-go. But it did make me think about something. You were talking about giving people the benefit of the doubt. I don't know that I used to project that as well. And that some of the guys were talking about, the real good Twitter ones, I don't know that they're giving the people the benefit of the doubt anymore. And I don't know that any of us, well, you might be the last bastion of people having good conversations, but how do you feel about that of there's such a divide in this world, and especially, maybe we feel it more harshly on Twitter, but do you think people are giving you the benefit as much as you are giving them?
I don't really care.
All right.
I just know I don't really care. I mean,
but as far as conversations go,
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, maybe not on Twitter, but if I engage in a conversation, I had an interesting conversation the other day with a guy who's a Christian conservative, and we're talking, and he brings up Israel, because I was quoting Thomas Jefferson about entangling alliances.
Yeah.
And so he brings up Israel, and I'm like, okay, what do you mean by Israel? And he goes, well, the Bible says that Israel is, God's chosen people, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, but didn't God leave the temple in Israel? And the Israelis didn't know where to find him? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, so what makes you think that the Israel that's mentioned in the New Testament is the exact same Israel that was mentioned in the Old Testament? Like the way I read it was that Israel in the New Testament and was referring to Christianity. It's the new Israel. That's new. That's God's new chosen people. That he abandoned all that nonsense and said, this is my new chosen people. So if you're going to look at it that way, and can you still look at the nation state the same way? He's like, no. And I'm like, cool. So let's have a conversation from that aspect, because maybe that changes the way you look at things. Like just to kind of like flush that out. Like you don't have to believe it, but let's just view it from there. And we did. We had about an hour-long conversation from that perspective. And he was like, that's interesting. Like, never looked at it that way. And, okay, yeah, I can see that the war on Christians is much more damaging to the culture around us and to the world as a whole than the war on Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a way to have a conversation with somebody who viewed something a little bit different than me, and just say, okay, can we just step back and just look at it a little differently? And I understand where you're coming from, but where you're coming from, it's just, there's a wall there and we can't have a conversation now. But if we step back and we kind of expropriate this and we kind of take it apart and we kind of look at it a little bit differently, then maybe there's a bigger, broader message there that we haven't been seeing. And so maybe that's what we need to be looking at.
Yeah. So I do want to say that you're the great Scott Horton. When I first heard about him and Dave Smith pushing him out there, talking to the left from the left and the right from the right, I really took that to heart. And that was kind of the time I was becoming a libertarian myself. And I went on trips with some high school kids, friends from mine from high school. And I gave that a shot. So just what you're doing there with your friend talking about Israel is taking something that's personal to them and kind of making them think about it rather than just immediately. And by the way, all of 6 of us or so, all but maybe one of them have become libertarians, or at least that much more leaning. One was kind of on the right, a bunch of them were on the left. And it's fascinating to kind of see the development of my persuasion of just being wide open with, different points of view when you first start things out. So while I said to begin with, I'm I'm not giving people the benefit of the doubt. In personal lives, in conversation, family and friends, you definitely have to do that. It is fun to kind of take that process apart.
I don't expect the same courtesy online, but
yeah,
I would expect it from my friends. I would expect it from like Reed Coverdale or Pete or someone like that. I would expect that same courtesy from them, right? So if I were to challenge them or ask them a question that was challenging, I would expect them to understand that I'm coming from a good place because they know who I am. And if they immediately like went defensive on me, I'd be like, whoa, hold up, brother. So I do expect it from people I know, but like if I engage with somebody I don't know, I don't expect that same courtesy, but I'm not going to bring myself down to their level. I'm just not that type of person, You'll see this with Scott too. Scott Horton's like this. He won't do that. He's not going to get down in the mud with you. It's just, if I get down in the mud with you, then you've won, right? But if I continue to talk as a rational human being and you're being a complete fucking douchebag, well, that shows your character, not mine. Now you're just showing the world who you are, and I just don't give a fuck,
Yeah. I've had that with some neighbors where they come over and we're just all kind of hanging out, drinking outside. Just as happened this summer, and one of them starts to just outlandish comments, politically, and the decision has to be made immediately. Do you just kind of make a joke and just override it, or do you just decide you're going to dig in and this is where we're going to go? And the one time I did dig in, and it was kind of ugly, but for the most part, some of those you have to pick your battles, and it's just not worth it. What's the situation? Neighbors, we're gonna go to toe to toe on some things, and you can tell where they're going at it to begin with. You're not going to have a good conversation.
Right.
And, that could go same with your spouse, right? And you talked about projecting on other people. I mean, it's a relationship issue, which is. You come into it, maybe you've been divorced before, and so now your wife is doing something and you're going to treat her as the last person you were with rather than giving them the benefit of the doubt, as you talked about, which is the right thing to do, and let this person make their own mistakes or positive outcomes based on them rather than your own insecurities on the last person.
Right. No, it's something I've dealt with because I've been divorced twice before this marriage. And yeah, it's hard to any kind of like pain or turmoil. Like I guess you could call it PTSD, but I don't like to use that term like that.
Right.
That you've experienced in life, you carry along with you. My dad told me one time. He said dating someone's ex is like buying a used car. You're just taking over somebody else's problems.
Right.
So, you have to be aware that person is bringing baggage into the relationship, but you're bringing baggage as well. And you can't let that baggage get in the way of that, for sure. But this kind of leads into the main topic that I wanted to get into. I've appreciated this kind of intro into it.
Yeah.
I don't really like talking about Twitter that much. I find it to be boring. I don't know if you even notice. I don't get on Twitter all that much. Maybe like twice a day or something like that.
I
It's
see your
very rare.
interactions like on a Saturday night, it seems like.
Yeah, when I'm drunk. Yeah.
Those are the best.
So I've been outside working all day, and I come home and I start cranking beer back. I'm like, yeah, let's talk shit.
Right.
But I usually, and if somebody ever gets offended by what I say on a Saturday night on Twitter, I'm sorry, man, because I'm usually just joking and I'm just being a smartass and I'm just talking shit to talk shit. I mean nothing by it. It's just my way of like just kind of shooting the shit with my boys. My boys aren't around anymore. All my boys are married and with kids. And so,
how many kids do you have?
I have 5.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Got 4.
From 2 marriages. Yes. My youngest 2 are coming over this weekend. They're 17 and 18.
Oh, okay. That's close to mine. My youngest is almost 16, and then there's 17, 19, 21. So clumped them in there.
Yep, me too. Mine are, even though they're from 2 different marriages, they are pretty clumped together. I'm like, how did I manage that? I was fucking smoking when I was younger.
Oh, you still are, right? Yeah.
Probably. I'd probably shave this beard. I probably look like I was 19 still.
Yeah. Better to change, yeah.
But my wife would divorce me if I shaved my beard.
Yeah, she's a big fan.
Oh, yeah, she loves beards. She's a beard fan. Yeah, I told her the other day because my beard's going gray and my hair's not. I'm like, I'm going to look funny, man. Here in the next 6 months, I'm going to look like Santa Claus from the ears down and then just this brown hair. So
as long as it doesn't get like the Jack Murphy style, you're probably fine.
Oh, God. Please, no. I don't want to have to let my wife sleep with black men.
Okay. Yeah, that's a bummer. Sorry, the beard made me do it. I had no choice.
Did he make her do it? I don't know. I don't know the story that well.
I don't either, honestly. I was never a big fan. But whatever. We don't have to go
I didn't even know who he was until I saw him on Timcast once, and I was like, okay, this guy's not that interesting, and I turned it off.
I think that's the same here.
I do that a lot with like Tim Pool's guest. I'll turn it on at like right after, like about 10 minutes after 7. I'll turn it on. I'll rewind it to the beginning, find out who's on his show, listen to a couple of their comments, and decide whether or not I want to listen to the rest of it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not a huge Timcast fan, but every once in a while he has somebody decent on there that's worth listening to. But so you're in family law.
Correct.
Okay. So I've been divorced twice and I have 5 kids. So, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I've actually put this on Twitter quite a few times, probably last year, I guess it was. I put that the fastest way to radicalize a father is to put him through family law.
No.
Yeah.
Or ruin him.
Yeah, it will ruin you. It really it's very scarring. It's a really jacked up experience. I remember one time I was about 23 years old. I was just out of the military, and I had fallen behind on my child support because when I got out of the military, I couldn't find a job. I was out of work for like 8 months. I was on unemployment. They were taking out of the $250 a week they were sending me for unemployment, they were taking 130 of it and sending it to her. And, so I'm having to live with my parents until I can find a place or find a job. Finally get a job with Halliburton, which is where I got my CDL.
Okay.
And they put me through training and all that. And about, I don't know, like I said, when I found the job, got the job for Halliburton, I was already 8 months behind on child support. Another 6 months passed, and I have to show up to the Attorney General's office. You may have heard me tell this story before.
No.
So we're sitting in the Attorney General's office. Here I am, 23 years old with 3 kids. She's my ex is 21 years old, and the Associate Attorney General, whoever it was that was handling the case, it was a lady. It wasn't the actual Attorney General. It was somebody that worked for him, one of his staffers. And she looks at my ex-wife and she said, Well, he's 8 months behind on child support. I see that he has been making payments for the last few months. But do you think he's going to catch up, or should we put him in jail? And I'm like, why does she have the authority to put me in jail? The bitch just divorced me. She hates me. Like,
yeah. What do you think she's going to say?
Yeah. Yeah. So luckily she was like, no, he's making payments now. I know he went through a rough time. I understand. Like, whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't have to go to, at least I don't have to go to jail for this. So it's a very surreal experience to be in that situation where it feels in so many ways, and through so many of my experiences, it's been that my life and my relationship with my children is dependent on other people and not on my willingness or my ability or my, time expectations or whatever. There have been so many things that I've been excluded from, that the children in some ways probably hold it against me to an extent, as if I didn't want to be involved. And it's a very, very difficult thing to go through.
Yeah, you've got to be. So, I mean, I've been divorced myself. Okay, married. It was 10 years, divorced, and then remarried. Have so two of the kids that I have now are with mine, and the other two are stepkids that are mine. Their dad's not in the picture, so it's 4 solid kids. But yeah, you go through this process, and the kids they're not supposed. I just had a case. I'm talking to the dad yesterday. I don't even want to get into all the crap that he's having to dig his way out of. But one of the kids is really upset about Dad, you left us, or whatever, or Mom, whatever the deal is. They're having these now you're not supposed to have conversations about your case with the kids. It's just not healthy. But Mom's doing it. So now the kid's arguing with Dad about what Mom's saying about the case, and Dad's put in the middle here, and he's trying to talk to the child, and why, when you were at home, why didn't you come in and talk to me more? And so there's so many baggage issues that these kids now have to deal with, and you're putting the court obviously in the place. And it'd be nice as a libertarian to figure out some sort of society and issue a way that this works better. But here's where we are. And I often tell people, I'm like, look, you go into court, this judge doesn't know you. You've made some pleadings. You're gonna beg and plead about a few things. He's gonna make a decision. It's always best to try to work things out with both parties, of course, because what's best for you, rather than this stranger making these decisions for you. But that's not always the case. And then you as you rightly said, you're going. This is contentious, right? So you're going through a divorce, or you're going through a custody thing, and she wants more money, and then the state doesn't have a fair scheme of taking care of this. You're going to put you in jail. What they do here in California is if you get behind, they start having arrears, and those arrears are there's interest 10% per annum, which starts to be it's more than you're going to get out of a savings account. And then if you're behind, they're going to take your driver's license from you. Well, how are you going to have a job if you can't get someplace? Well, then they're going to lock you up. Well, the only thing about locking you up, it will stay at least the support. So if you're actually in jail, that's one way that you wouldn't have to be continually paying on these things. It's a bad situation. It's a bad issue. But once you involve the state in it, that's kind of where you're at. I have a lot of ideas about trying to resolve these things, but the best way to do it is, as you said, you can radicalize a young man in some ways. It's really to be the kind of person that you should be in life, pick the right mate, make the right decisions. These are all things that can start with you, not you personally, but all of us. Like I said, I've been through this, and it changed me. It put me in a place where I'm like, if you make the same mistakes just with anything, taking the bar, if you don't pass it the first time, you're going to study the exact same way you did the first time. You're going to fail just like you did. I don't know what you're expecting, different outcomes. So change your life. I don't care if it's 5% your fault and it's all hers that the divorce went south, or whatever it is. Fix what it's going to be so you don't get in that position next time. And it's easy to preach these kind of things, but there's a lot of young people out there that listen to us A lot of good libertarians and women, if whatever you're going through your genders here, whatever make your other person, let's just use the normal male, female thing here. If you're a woman, you're going to get a man, make sure he's a stand-up dude, make him do things, make him, do projects, reward him for those kind of things. And the guy should be picking the right kind of mate too. It sounds stupid, but I'm a fan of marriage. As a matter of fact, my wife said this the other day. She was talking to my son. She's like, messed up something about one of his baseball teammates' dads. So I thought they were divorced. And he's like, no, they're not divorced. And she goes, oh, good. I'm a fan of marriage. And her son goes, well, good, because you're on your second one. You're collecting. So
that's a good one, though.
Yeah, he's a solid kid.
Give him a cookie for that one. So, yeah, no, and what you're saying is absolutely true, because I remember, like, one of the difficult times I had to deal with was my daughter. She's 8 years old. Comes over to my house. We're sitting there watching UFC, and she's sitting next to me, and we're watching, and she goes, Dad? I'm like, yeah. She goes, Mom just wishes you would go away so we could be a normal family. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, why are you telling an 8-year-old this?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, well, adults don't always get along. Like, what am I going to tell her?
Right.
The one thing I always tried to make a rule was not to badmouth my kid's mom. Like, no matter how I felt, and I had strong feelings. I'm not shy about expressing my feelings, but I would bite my tongue around my kids, and I would always just tell them, like, look, you only have one mom, so I'm not gonna talk bad about your mom. If your mom wants to talk bad about me, that's between you and your mom. And it stuck with some of my kids, hearing it for 18 years, but I know coming out the other side, I was a principled libertarian. Is that what I'm supposed to say? No, I know I did the right thing. I did the right thing for them as far as that goes. I was in bad financial shape in a lot of ways. There were times I couldn't get my car running. I couldn't get gas in my car. I couldn't have food in the house, that I wouldn't expose them to these, and I would have to cancel at times, like my weekends, because I was like, no, I'm not going to do this to my kids. If I got to sit here and eat ramen noodles, then fine, I'll eat ramen noodles, but I'm not going to make my kids sit here and be totally miserable because we can't go to the park or we can't do this. I had to make decisions, and maybe I wasn't right. Maybe I made mistakes in these decisions, but the one thing I always was sure of, that I was making the decisions for the right reasons, right? And so whenever I think this kind of goes into the way I look at things, and when I get into these conversations with people, because I don't think it's right to jump to conclusions, because sometimes it may appear one way, but there are other reasons. And so whenever I do a podcast like I did the other day, where I'm saying, well, like, we don't have to attribute nefarious intent to these people to understand that there are consequences to these actions.
Yeah.
And so it's because I know that in my life, as I've done things, I've made mistakes, even with the right intent in mind. Even trying to reach the correct ends, I've done it incorrectly. And so I guess it's easy for me to wear that other shoe and say, oh, okay, I see where you could fuck that up, Yeah.
And as a parent, we're always trying to do those things, right? As a family law attorney, and then, like I said, someone who went through divorce, it's interesting where I'm often advising families of, what to do. And now I'm lucky that my ex-wife, we never had any issues. We resolved things without having to go to court. We work together perfectly fine. But still, there's always a thing here and there. And anyway, I'm advising people, and then I'm like, at one point I remember like I'm get paid a lot of money to give advice to do this, to counsel these people and to guide them along in this process. And what are you doing in your own life? Because there was a point in there where I was between marriages, and I was maybe a little reckless, and you're not always making the best decision for your kids. And so I had to kind of step back, and some of that's just growing up, right? And in hindsight. But it's with anything, you can learn to be that decision maker in your own household, and try to think through things. And some of that is just trying to put on the back burner the emotions that you have. One of the, I'm not telling everyone to go out and get a family law attorney if they're going through things like this. But one thing an attorney can help you is not be so emotional in court. I'm in court this morning, okay, and the judge is talking to, there's an attorney on one side, he's representing the husband. I don't know the case. Mom's on the other side, and the whole issue is about getting her a psychological evaluation. Okay, so she's obviously, the judge has determined that she needs a psych eval, and he asked her, state your appearance for me, and she's like, I want to plead the fifth. Now, this is not a criminal procedure, so she's already starting out a little loony, and goes through the process. Finally, halfway, she just stands up and leaves. So. If she's had an attorney, that person could at least, deflect some of the emotions, because that's, with everything, if you can deflect the emotion out and talk like a normal person without having to be so emotional about things, you obviously can persuade more, you can get your point across. And I think that's the one thing that we try to do as attorneys is, one, not have our clients walk out in the middle of court, but two, to not be acting crazy or get their emotions so high that they can't properly project what they need to. And that goes with everything, right? Public speaking, you're in a maybe even a Twitter spat, which you don't like to do, or you're having that conversation with the other person about whatever it is, trying to teach yourself to go through these processes without having all the emotion involved. But when it's your kids, when you're getting propositioned by the DA, as you said, when you want to put them in jail, well, you might get a little emotional.
Yeah. Well, I think it took me a minute to figure out I think I was out of there before I understood what the hell just happened. I was just like, what the, I was 23. My mind wasn't completely formed yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was still forming my frontal cortex while smoking dope and drinking a lot of beer. So,
right. But one other thing too about, the kids, if you do what you did and you tell them, I'm not going to badmouth your mom, you may not have a great relationship with them growing up, but I don't guarantee it, but there's a good chance that when they get older and they start thinking back about it, they're going to go, dad did the right thing. He never badmouthed mom, and they're going to have these conversations, and it's going to probably give you a more fulfilling relationship, later on for doing the right thing when it was difficult.
Yeah, no. And that's what I counted on, is let's just do the right thing, delayed gratification. So, I'd also say about the experience you had today with that woman, part of that sounds to me like she just didn't understand what was going on, right? She's pleading the fifth. She really at that time, like you said, could use an attorney because she had no idea what was going on. She didn't understand what was happening right there in front of her, and so that's on top of being in a highly stressful emotional situation. It just adds on to it because you're confused on top of it. You don't understand. So I could see how you could just want to walk out and be like, I don't understand. I don't care. Whatever. I'm done, and just leave.
I will say the judge, in his defense, tried to explain all this to her in a nice way. Do you not want, because if you don't want to be heard, you don't have to be heard, and I'll just make the ruling myself. And then he did explain that the last two hearings that she had to be restrained by the by the bailiff. Oh, wow. So I was like, first, and then I was like, oh no, she's just, and she looked put together, good looking lady, and you just never know what kind of demons people are having.
Oh, one of them typical white liberals.
Right. Probably she was wearing all white. She was very.
We've all run into those white liberals on Twitter,
right?
But no. So, I think we can start this conversation from the premise that, for the most part, how often is it that you run into a situation where you're going through a divorce and dealing with family law, and the parents don't care about the children?
You usually have one. I've had some men that aren't getting their way. I had a dad. So you don't often, to answer your question bluntly, you don't often have it where they both don't care about the kids. Okay. There's typically, they both care. They both, at least in my game, that's kind of the way it is. You could always tell that some of them are just trying to angle. They're not so much about the kids, but more about hurting the other party, trying to get more support. I've had a few dads that when things didn't go their way, they weren't really in the kids' lives, and they came back, and then they're trying to get more custody, and it's just not going their way. They just signed over their rights to moms, and you could only do that if someone's willing to adopt on the other side. You can't just say, I don't want to be involved in this child's life anymore. But if the other side is, remarried, and they're going to have that guy step in as the step parent, you can do it, a step parent adoption, and just be fine with it. And I've had a few do that, and it's kind of, totally lose respect for those kind of people, honestly.
Yeah. That's, man. I don't know. I never got to the point where it was like, you have another man raising my children, yet I'm still paying for them to be raised. I always felt that responsibility, at least to make sure the child support was paid, even if I wasn't being able to see the kids.
Yeah.
It always felt like that was part of my responsibility. But I mean, I've been in some crazy situations myself and made some rash decisions at times, and man, that's a hard one. I couldn't imagine thinking that way, but I can kind of understand getting to that point if things are that crazy to where, like, look, I don't get to see my kids. You have another man raising my kids. They call another man dad. They don't even recognize me. Like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm losing half of my pay for what? To support you and your new husband, to raise my child as if I don't exist. I can kind of see the anger,
Yeah.
I don't know I can't say I would ever get to the point of walking out of my kids' lives like that, but I can understand that decision in a, like you said, you're in an emotional place, a heat of rage, like, just let's fuck it,
The problem is it's they make that decision, and then it takes a while to go through that process. So they've had some calm down, and they're still doing it. As a dad, I couldn't imagine doing that. And for the most part, and this once again, my perspective is all California. So almost everything, unless you've beat the child up, it's going to be a temporary custody order. You can always get that modified. And I was just telling my client this morning, I'm like, something bad happen. You listen to me. We're going to get you set right, and it may be 6 months, but those that don't pay attention, it's 2 years to get things done. Get you back in to have custody in the right way. But if you listen, it's a few months, and that child's life, that's a small portion. It seems astronomical at this point, but you do the right thing. It's in the scheme of things, it's not. So, once again, I've had some moms that haven't given up rights, but they just kind of ditch out too. So it's not just one or the other. There's just crazy people that some of them, maybe shouldn't have kids, but here we are.
Yeah, no, yeah. Oh, no, you're right. Everything in the court system takes fucking forever. So, if you even have like a rash explosion at one point in time, just out of a heat of anger, you would think, like you said, you'd have a cool down period where you'd be like, yeah, I probably don't want to go through this. Yeah. So I definitely get what you're saying. I had a buddy of mine, really good friend of mine, over several years. I used to know the exact time frame, but it was 10, 15 years. Around that 10, 15 years, he fought for custody of his daughters. He spent $70,000 in fighting for custody. And their mother got a DUI with them in the car, and he still never was able to get custody. And what it did was gave their mother ammunition to use against him to make them hate him in the long run. And, so when you think you're doing the right thing, like in these situations, you always remember there's another party involved, and you're not in control of everything. And so the decisions you're making are having an influence over other people's lives, and it's having a major influence over your own life and your own emotional well-being too. I mean, you'll go through bouts of depression. I mean, my buddy went through depression so many times.
Yeah.
Like, we'd be hanging out, I would just go hang out with him because I felt so bad for him at times because we were good friends. So it wasn't like I was hanging out of sympathy, but it was like I had to be there. I felt like I had to be there, because he didn't have anybody else there. And he was just going through so much emotionally. So all these, you can think you're making the right decision. You can think you're doing the right things, and it all blows up in your face in the long run.
Yeah, there's so many. I could just go and tell you story after story of situations. So sometimes I'm baffled by this, and honestly, it gets a bit depressing, right? So part of my goal in life is to kind of move away from family law. But sometimes you do some. People always like to ask us about attorneys. Oh, do you win or do you lose? What's your win-loss record in a sense? And with family law, it's not even that, because it's really about expectations. Did you kind of get what I expect? Someone comes into the case for me and they've already screwed it up. What are you going to do? Or they're just a shithole person, or maybe the other person is. And so it's hard to say whether you win or lose. But I had a case a few weeks ago, and this poor dad. We had a trial, and the daughter was 16, and the judge let her testify, which is usually not very. I argued against it, but he said it was going to happen. She didn't want anything to do with her dad. As a matter of fact, she said when the judge is calling it her father, she said, no, please call him Mr. She said her last name. Didn't even want to have it be his name. So what do you do in a situation like that? I was pretty heartbroken. The guy, it was so bad that the trial's over. The judge obviously, didn't go with my client's way, but it's what it was. This guy then wants to borrow my phone to call a cab. And so I drove him to his home afterwards. And that was one of the most depressing drives. You lose a trial. Your client doesn't have his custody of his kid. She doesn't want anything to do with him. He was a little unstable, but it's what it is. And then I had to drive him home. But that's it's a rough life sometimes for us.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah,
it really is.
That one really affected me overnight. I can't always be the Tin Man. I did have a girlfriend call me that once. But you do, like I said, you have to kind of dissociate yourself with your emotions so that you can be the best for that client. But because if you take them on like it's your own kid, you're just going to be burnt out, and you're not going to be good, arguing either. So there's a good medium there. But these people, it hurts me often, to see what's happening. So,
well, and it's how much of you said he was a bit unstable, and it's like how much of his instability was a result of everything he'd been going through.
Yeah. True. I think a lot of it was, the case against him. Mom had got a restraining order a few years ago. It just was up. He goes, to make contact with the daughter again, and then they file another one on him. It was so bad. Okay. Mom has now dated. She has a new partner. Okay. Mm-hmm. And let's call the partner Jacqueline. Well, now Jacqueline now goes by Jack. Okay. Jack was undergoing full-on therapeutic, hormone replacement, whatever. Jack gets up on the stand with a full beard, okay? Jack is you can obviously see it's a biological female. And Jack is testifying how my client is mentally unstable. And it was somewhat convincing. So when you have... when you have that kind of situation, I feel bad for the guy.
I guess when you've been acting like, when you're a female acting like a man, it's easy to act like somebody else is unstable.
I was like, I know I'm in California. I was even, because we had a break over lunch. And I'm like, is there any way I can bring this in? How it's just, we all are acting
so
like
absurd.
It's so absurd. Wait, you're saying my guy's unstable. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
But I didn't go that direction. Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, You might have lost your license. Yeah.
Yeah, the judge. I don't know. He was. I do.
Are you sure
you
it
gotta,
was a he?
I didn't check under the robe, but
Like that Crocodile Dundee move.
yeah, exactly. Or the "it's a man, baby" type of thing. So yeah.
I just remember on Crocodile Dundee where there was that lady hitting on him, and they're like, "That's right. That's a guy." And he just grabbed her crotch.
Yeah. Have you watched that movie lately? Does it hold up?
I haven't watched it in years. I just remember that part because everything that's going on around us. It's like, yeah, it's like that's how you're gonna have to shake hands from now on. I'm gonna have to grab your dick,
right?
You know, so yeah, I have to camel tap you, man.
It's a crazy world out there.
Yeah, you got a little bit more time.
Yeah, I got a little bit more.
Okay, well, let's talk about a crazy world. It's a woke world after all.
Yeah,
Disney's going full woke on us.
They are.
Oh my God. So we're both lucky. Our kids are grown.
Yeah.
And, but I have a granddaughter. I don't know if you have any grandkids or
nope, none yet.
anytime soon.
Nope. Hope not.
I have a granddaughter, so I have to think about this. And, we had a really interesting, backlash in Virginia where, a gubernatorial candidate was rejected because he was saying parents don't have any right to be involved in their kids' education, and that this is kind of reverberated since then. It was kind of hush hush. You kind of had the idea that these people felt like they owned your children, but after this guy came out and said, no, parents have no right to have any say in the education of their children, it is completely taken over. Now, my kids went to public school, and I wasn't extremely politically active until probably about 5 years ago. So I really didn't understand what they were getting into or what they were involved in until that time. But if I would have seen this type of stuff happening in the school district, I would have yanked them out of the school so fast. You know, the whole, we have to teach children under 9 years old about transgenderism and homosexuality. And it's like, why? What does a kid under 9 years old have? Why do they need to know this shit? They don't even know how to read or add yet. Like, what the hell they know how to fuck for?
Right. Well, and have you noticed the narrative is all about, it's not about and once again, I'm sorry, I'm not necessarily a big fan of teachers. The narrative to them is about, woe is me, the teacher. I'm not able to talk about, kayaking with Bill over the weekend, rather than about the kids, which, I live here near Sacramento. They've had a teacher strike in the town here in Sacramento for quite a while. It just ended yesterday, I think. And, they definitely weren't arguing over the best interests of the children. Okay. They never do.
It had everything to do with them.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with the kids.
And was it McAuliffe that got ousted because of that?
Yes, that was his name. I couldn't remember his name.
Well, he's a big old Clinton donor from the past and a big guy. So I think he ran into a buzzsaw of combination of problems, which is COVID. We've had enough of that. The mask situation. We had enough of that. And then you mix it with the CRT and the other woke stuff that's coming out, and then the comments about we're controlling your kids, and they're like, yeah, you definitely have been acting like it, and so we're getting you out of here. I'm lucky where I'm at. Two of my kids go to public school. Well, they're only one right now is in private school. One's in public school of high school. The other two are in college. And the public school right by our house, they've almost been better than the private school in some of this stuff. The difference, though, it's a smaller community. They're a little bit more right-leaning, the community is, and so they've been really active and responding to the community's concerns with COVID and a lot of this stuff. The private school that it's great about is they are usually reactive, and I don't think a lot of the parents are as up in arms as some of them in the community for the public school, because they're just, they will react much quicker. Their whole deal, you're paying them tuition, they're going to respond much better than the other side is. But which is an interesting situation that you've had. It really comes down to, and in my perspective on this is, who are the parents making a big deal about it? And for me, and the private school ones just aren't making a big deal about it as much as the public school ones. And I'm not a fan of that anyway, but the public school, that is.
I just think I think when you mess with somebody's children, you're stepping on a landmine.
Yeah.
And when you come out and you tell these people they're not your children, they're our children.
Yeah.
Those are fighting words. You're asking for someone to get violent. Really, in that situation. That's a very dangerous way to address that conversation.
Very much so. And, you think back of I mentioned McAuliffe, and he was a big Clinton person, her book, It Takes a Village, which was the whole concept there as well. This is nothing new. It's just when are we going to, it's maybe cycles coming and going of, the right's not in power. So they're going to be pushing back on a lot of this stuff. My daughter, she's a freshman in college, and she's taken an English class, and she was just talking to me about it, where every topic is the same topic. I mean, they do writing projects or whatever, but it's all about gender, the different types of gender. And that's the topic on everything for English, which is, and I was getting a little, now my kids are, kind of like me, where they're skeptical on things, and they're kind of tuned to what this is. And so she was just like, I'm just trying to get a good grade. And she wrote something that was, maybe a little more down the middle. She didn't get a good grade. Then she wrote something that she knew would please the teacher. She got a good grade, and she's like, And now, at what point does that still influence them? Because I'm not happy about that. I would like her to push back, and just it should be about like sentence structure and this, and who cares what the actual topic is, right? So that's disappointing. And I don't know where we're going with this. You're just talking about having grandkids. I'm not quite there yet. But it's like, oh, we're almost empty nesters. So it's good for us. We're out the door, and our kids are being successful. But I don't know maybe they're going to be joining Pete and sending people to the wall. Hopefully, I don't know.
Tell your daughter to call me. I'll teach her how to write a great essay called "Who Fucking Cares." It's all of 3 words. Who fucking cares? Yeah, no. Like you shouldn't pander. The more you pander, you're just empowering them. You're just giving them more power. For the longest time, I kind of took this libertine approach, where it was like, I don't live my life like that, but like, whatever, you do you, man. And now I'm like, you're a fucking sick bastard. Like, it's just like, because I've seen what it turned into. I've seen it go from, well, live and let live, man, to everybody should live this way. Everybody has to believe this way. Well, wait. You sound a lot like the Christians, in medieval times. Everybody has to believe this, and if you don't, we're going to kill you. No, we're not. I'm not willing to go down that road. I'll die on this bridge or hill. That's the right word. Hill. Right. I'll die on this hill. That you're not going to make me believe a certain thing. You're not going to make me think a certain way. And I'm old enough to where it's like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You might as well just let me live out my life the way I'm living my life, and try to train the youngsters, because it's not worth your time to fuck with me.
So what's your solution on that then?
I don't think there is a solution, man. I think people have to organize communities. I've been saying this for a long time. You got to get back involved in your community. I would really like to see a revitalization of the extended family. I think you have to, in order to revitalize the extended family, you have to revitalize the nuclear family, because they've destroyed it, So the revitalization and the understanding of the nuclear family, I've had this conversation with my wife about abortion. I don't think passing laws is going to fix this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you think about it and how you feel about it. It's a cultural issue. So how do you have to wind back the clock on the culture. You have to convince the culture that being pro-life is more important than what you want to do with your life. And so many people, and so I've been reading a lot of like Alexander Dugin. I'm reading this book here. It's called The Final Kingdom by Pyotr Volkov. And I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right, but so I'm reading some of this, like kind of trying to get an idea of what this whole like Russian idea of political theory is, right? And I don't know, like some of the things I think they have right. Sorry, guys. I tapped my lighter. The dogs thought someone was knocking. So they're doing their job. I think some of the things they have right, you know, and unfortunately we're at a situation where they call liberalism, they say it's totalitarian. But it's not totalitarian in the traditional sense of the term. It's totalitarian through propaganda, you know, via Edward Bernays, right? And what liberalism has done has produced this radical individualism. Well, what is the best way to divide and conquer a civilization if not to convince each and every person that everyone else is the other, right? And so this is why I think this is why I have such a hard time with the arguments in libertarian Twitter. And you're not focusing on the actual enemy. You're focusing internally. Why are you focusing internally? Right? It's like the Ouroboros. It's the snake eating its own tail. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not accomplishing anything. So the radical individualism has led to a culture of division, to where we're incapable of focusing on the actual enemy. And so the individual is mad at the other individual for acting as an individual would act. Well, wait, like, I thought you were a radical individualist. He was acting as an individual. Why are you mad at that individual for acting as an individual? I don't understand what your perspective is. Well, he didn't act like the individual I thought he should be. Right? So your individualism is actually collectivism, in which you're the king of the collective, is what you're telling me. And I'm not buying it. I'm like looking at it and I'm like, this is cancer. This has been eating away at us. And, you know, James Burnham has this really great book called Suicide of the West, where he talks about this. Yeah. And he talks about how the liberal ideology would eat away at society. And it's really good. If you haven't read it, anybody out there hadn't read it, read it. It's very good. I should probably read it again. Just, it was that good, where I probably didn't absorb everything I should have absorbed from that book, but what I did get from it, I found very useful. So we have to get away from this idea. And I don't have a problem with libertarianism, because I was talking to Adam the other day, actually, Adam Patrick, and we were texting back and forth and we were chatting, and I was like, he said something about libertarians. And I said, well, you know, like, I don't really consider myself a libertarian. I don't call myself a libertarian. I'm at the Libertarian Institute. My best friends are libertarians. I'm probably more closely aligned politically with libertarians than I am with anything else. But I don't really consider myself a libertarian, because I don't think that you should limit yourself to an ideology or a theory. that there's so much more to a human being than the last book you read, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody used to make fun of Donald Trump about like his decisions were causation of the last 3 people he had talked to.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody used to make fun of it, but a libertarian really, his theory is based upon the last book it read. Like seriously, I mean that's basically what we're looking at here, and so libertarianism is kind of this like crazy evolution of liberalism that I find to be perverted in order to pacify those that would fight for liberty. And I don't know if it was done intentionally, and I'm not going to sit there and say like Rothbard was a psyop, or some shit like that. But it's the same thing. Like as much as I enjoy Rothbard and as much as I enjoy Bastiat and all these great writers, Hoppe, like all these great writers, Higgs, I think that the consistent, it's kind of like going down a conspiracy rabbit hole, right? You eventually get to a place where even if you are right, you're not going to convince anybody. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what libertarianism has done. It has isolated people away from society, away from tribes, away from family, put them in a bubble, and created a self-destructive mechanism within themselves because they're always striving for a utopia they'll never achieve. And I think that's extremely dangerous. Like not living life, but living in a theory, I think is dangerous. And that's kind of the conclusion I've come to on libertarianism here recently. And it's been based upon a lot of the books I'm reading on other political theories from Eastern Europe or other cultures and other societies. And it's like, wait a second. Like not everybody thinks the way we do. And we're dividing ourselves. We're intentionally dividing ourselves. And so our natural tribe that we would naturally like fit right into is this divisive cohort of chaos running about like madmen. When if you tribe together, you say, well, hey, look, we got 90% of our ideas in common. Let's come together in this expansive, like kind of beyond ideological tribalism that puts us on a footing to where we can actually defeat the enemy that is propagandizing and destroying us from within.
So there's a lot there, and
there is a lot there. This is a lot of what's been going on in my head for the last 2 weeks.
Well, and I love it. And so first of all, let's start back with Dugan. I don't know too much about it. I know he was on Thaddeus Russell's podcast, and then someone else, Lauren Southern, I think, talked to him as well. And I know Glenn Beck has had a lot to say about Dugan. So I don't know. I haven't listened to the podcast with him. I know Glenn says he's a spooky dude. So it's much like George Soros. So it'd be interesting. I should probably check in on some of that. What you're saying though, it does ring true.
He's
so
spooky. Let me just clarify that, because the reason Glenn Beck thinks he's spooky is because he's anti-liberal. Right?
Okay.
So
the original liberal term that we would think of, not like lefty liberal.
Yeah, like liberalism as far as like Western civilization, liberal society.
Yeah.
He's anti-liberal society.
Right.
He from what I understand, and I've been reading some of his stuff, some of his essays, and like I said, this other guy I've been reading who's expanding on some of his essays. What I understand, and is there more I can't think of a better term, which I don't think it's the right term because it's kind of like let's just say it's like, it's almost like a neo-theocratic, I guess what I would say. They believe, all right, so they say liberalism ushered in materialism. Materialism is the cause of racism because you're looking at the material being and judging the person based upon their material self, right? They believe in what is called spiritual racism. So it's like the spiritual acolytes of a person determine whether or not that person has the ability to be in power. Let's say something like that.
So it's almost well, see, there's some good lefty stuff that kind of mixes in there about materialism.
There is. Absolutely there is.
and about power struggle of, you can't be racist unless you are in control. And this sounds like it's maybe a deviation of sorts of that. Now, look, I would like to look into it. You made some interesting comments though too about which I'm with. I mostly grew up on the right side, and now I would consider myself libertarian, but I am religious. And I think that to me that's very important because it is, especially raising kids, new wife, well, we're 10 years together now, but her and I and our relationship, and I say that because she wasn't really religious when we met, and she's grown into that. And one of the things she's kind of brought to my attention is this idea that there's something above you. Okay, so for me, there's religion, there's our God, and we teach that to our kids, which means, you're not going to control, the world's not about you. You're not, sorry, climate change, real or not, you're not the person that's necessarily going to, you think you're so great that you're going to affect the climate of this world. Now, maybe we are, but I mean, take that into your own being. It's like, I think that's part of the problem with the Gretas and stuff of the world, that they think they are so important that they affect change and climate as it is. So, okay.
They are the center of the world.
They are the center of the world. So
the
for
world
me,
revolves around you. And
exactly.
This is a serious problem we have with a lot of people. We call them narcissists because they think the world revolves around them.
Yeah. So if that's my life, then for me, the libertarian stuff simply becomes how I kind of put that into effect with my neighbors and how I believe in other things. Yeah. And it's still, I still, my number one principle is still, the religious aspect of it, but I'm actually becoming more respectful to other people's ideas, I think now, than I was probably more rigid. But there's a lot of righties and there's a lot of lefties. When you talk about, there was how did you mention it there about, you become almost so libertine that you're almost communist in your own little community circle of if your opinions aren't my opinions, it's not the correct one in a sense. And you obviously said it much better than me, but I don't know if remember who Whittaker Chambers is, good old lefty. He was the Pumpkin Papers. He was the spy for back in, what was the guy's name? He wrote for Time magazine. He became a righty after a while, and he had made some comments about, an open mind is only open. It should be open on both ends, but it's always closed. You think you have an open mind, but your open mind is where you are projecting, and you're still having it closed to the side. So I don't know where we resolve some of this stuff, but there's a lot of the righties, post-libertarians, libertarians, lefties that I would not want them telling me what to do in any form, fashion whatsoever. Okay.
Absolutely.
And I hear them and I could agree with them on philosophy at times, but I'm like, there's no effing way I want you anywhere near my decision making. And let's just be honest. The right, they want to tell you how a lot of times, they put you up against the wall about things here and there. The left is the same way. And it's kind of the hubris idea of, I don't know what's best for people, but we're in a society. So, at some point you got to get along. And I think the only real solution for me is just getting out in the middle of nowhere and raising my chickens and dogs and whatnot. So that sounds horrible way to live your life, but
I've got a lot of that going on. So,
yeah.
No, it's not. Come visit. You'll love it.
Yeah. I'm an attorney, whatever. I'm pretty white looking, but we have a nice little place kind of in the country. Try to be very self-sufficient. I've learned how to take care of things my own and build stuff. And we have chickens. Like I said, we have cat. No, we don't have any cats. I don't know why I said that. We used to have cats. We have dogs and stuff. So
You need cats. You got to keep the snakes away.
yeah. Well, we don't really have a snake problem, but there are some mice.
My dogs keep chasing my cats away. all the feral cats that come around here, my dogs chase them away. Like, you sons of bitches. This is why we get rats in the house.
Right. We have bobcats that have been taking our chickens. That's been rough.
Yeah, that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Set out some traps.
Yeah, I built a nice coop, and we have a run, and then I have this really cool solar powered door. Well, it's powered that way, and it has a photoelectric sensor, so that 30 minutes after the sun goes down, it closes. 30 minutes after the sun comes up, it opens on automatically. It's saved us. We haven't lost a chicken in a year now.
Oh, nice. So. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I got myself some ducks, and I raised them with the chickens until they molted good, and they were full grown. And I was like, all right, well, I got a pond. I'm gonna go put my ducks on the pond. I'm gonna let my ducks live on the pond. And like 3 months later, I had no more ducks because the owls were taking them.
Yeah, the owls are rough.
Yeah,
they'll snap their heads off.
Well, now.
So how were the ducks? Tell me about it. My wife wants them. I'm like, no, they seem like they have bigger coops than.
Not really. No, okay. Because I have a pond, so I let them out. I'm gonna be letting them out on the pond. But right. So I just got some more baby ducks this year. They are bigger than chickens. I mean, obviously, but their eggs are bigger. And
yeah,
like the eggs are actually better. There's more yolk to them.
Yeah.
So they're richer.
Do you worry about them flying away?
No, their wings are shorter than chicken wings.
Okay.
Yeah. But so I'm building a coop. I don't know if you saw the pictures I posted this weekend, but I'm building, I called it the Duck Palace out by the pond. So I'll be letting them out in the mornings to go hang out on the pond and then close them up in the evenings. So, and pretty much what I do with my chickens, the way I kind of quote unquote train them is I'll put them in the coop, and I'm going to do this with the ducks as well. And I think it should work, but I put them in the coop for a month, and I'll let them hang out for a month or two in the coop. And then I start letting them out, and they go back at night when it's time for bed. And it's like, all right, that's easy enough.
Yeah, I don't know if people realize that. I mean, for us, we get them when they're little, you raise them up. Then when they start we're out of the little protected thing that we have them with the heater and stuff. Yeah. We start just putting them in the coop, and we haven't. People don't, I think, realize that they just put themselves to bed. They love their routine. They can't see at night, so they're gonna go put themselves in the coop. And as long as we shut the door. They're safe.
They're good. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But I don't know. We kind of went off a little bit on this whole liberalism idea, but like right. You've heard my podcast, so you know I do that. I have things on my mind that I've been thinking about and been working through, and I'm going to keep thinking about this because it's something that's bothering me. It's something I'm really like trying to contemplate and work through. And you'll hear me work through it, I'm sure.
It's fascinating to me, and it's I think the age-old problem, for both sides in a sense. And I think you mentioned abortion. I think that's the only way to really solve any of the problems is to win hearts and minds. That sounds so stupid, but you're going to legislate someone to, and you're never going to get people to act the way you want or whatever it is. But I think the best solution for a lot of this stuff is to just either alternative education systems, leave us alone type of policies and those kind of things. But it could be a pipe dream.
Well, we know that prohibition has never worked.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty obvious. If you look at history, prohibition doesn't work unless you're willing to just kill everybody who goes against the prohibition,
right.
And so that doesn't turn out well. That's not a good solution. So how do you change this? It's through the culture, and the left has up to this point has pretty much won the culture. Now, the right is pushing back, and I would say that I'm more socially conservative in the way I live my life, and so there are things about the right pushing back and the right fighting back that I find encouraging.
Yeah,
because I'm like, okay, like not everybody's a degenerate, but at the same time it's like, how far into the legislative process do you want to go to make sure, and what kind of penalties do you want to put on nonviolent acts, right? Like if if there are things that are being done that can affect a civilization, yet they're non-violent activities, how far do you go to stop these things, right? So we know that the infiltration of the universities, the infiltration of the schools, the infiltration of politics has hurt society as a whole.
Yeah.
But how far do you go to stop it?
Well, that's the ultimate question, right? Because at some point you don't want to digress into the kind of person that you're trying to protect everybody from, which is some sort of authoritarian dictator radical in a sense.
Exactly.
And I have friends, the lefty liberal types, and what's always odd to me, and I always have tried to talk to them about this, is they don't live their lives like they believe, in a sense. Very conservative financially, all these things, and I just think maybe it's like Walter Block has talked about, where he just thinks there's a different chemical in your brain that makes you one way or another, and that you're just predispositioned to be a certain, lefty or a righty. And I don't care what you're going to say, unless that person is really taking it under advisement and having a different walk in their life mentally, they're just always going to believe one way. Like I said, I have friends who are super, conservative as far as their own lives, and they don't vote that way at all.
Yeah. And that's why I think really, like, when you want to boil it down to solutions, as you asked earlier, you got to look at tribes. You got to look at bringing back the tribe. And I think the only tribe that works is the extended family. In order to get back to a point where the extended family is meaningful in any significant way, you have to revive and save the nuclear family. And the only way you're going to do that is through promoting it and culturally. You're not going to legislate the nuclear family into existence. It's just not going to happen.
Let me ask you a quick question on this. I don't know how much I got to go here in a second, but I heard Michael Malice the other day just talking to someone, and he was that person was mentioning the nuclear family. So Malice's retort is, well, maybe it was on Tim Pool, I don't remember, but his retort was, well, he's more into the extended family, right? Which is what you're talking about. You look at Eastern Europe or whatever, and it's the big families. That's kind of the whole deal. But you made a very good point, which is, okay, what are you just going to have a kid and then they just go off and live with an extended family? You kind of need nuclear to get to extended at some point. Yeah, there's a bridge that's not being connected there.
Yeah, they didn't destroy the extended family and it went down to single moms immediately. No, They had to destroy the nuclear. They had destroyed the extended family, then they destroyed the nuclear family. And you're going to have to rebuild that bridge the same way it was destroyed. It's going to be one step at a time, and it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick. It took them generations to get us to the point where we're at today. It didn't happen overnight, and people have to understand that this is a marathon that we're involved in, and we're probably, at least me in my age, I'm not going to see it come to fruition. But if we can start planting the seeds, maybe we can get there.
It's like a health issue, right? If you're like obese, you can't just flip a switch and be back to where you should be overnight. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a whole revamping of your lifestyle.
Yeah, it took you a long time to get fat. It's going to take you a long time to get thin.
That's what my brother-in-law told me once, and he was right.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, we've been going an hour and a half, and
I really appreciate it.
No, this has been a lot of fun. I could chat with you all night. This has been a blast. So, plug away.
Thanks for once again having me on the show. I really appreciate the connection to the Libertarian Institute. I'm Tyler Janke, TYLER JANKE on Twitter. I have a Libertarian podcast review you can check out there as well. I'm going to be in Reno as a delegate for the California Libertarian Party. So if you're out there, check me out. Say hi. It'd be nice to meet some more people. And then, check out my show just so you can find some of these great podcasts. Tommy, I've really enjoyed yours. It's just, I find it. Sometimes you look in the feed and you go, I don't know who that person is. Not interesting. And then you listen and it's just that odd person that you just, it's great. So you do a great job of bringing out the guests. So I know I'm plugging away, but I'm kind of tooting your horn too.
No, I appreciate that, man. I do. I try to just talk to everybody the way I would talk to you if I met you in person. I don't try to come across as like some smug little prick. I'm just a truck driver, dude. I'm nothing special. I was laughing the other day with Ryan, RyanBunting.com. For all of your racist graphic design needs, go to RyanBunting.com. I was talking to Ryan the other day. I was like, man, it just blows my mind. I got an email from a guy the other day. He's like, oh, I'm an attorney, yada, yada, yada. I really like your show. And I'm like, man, it just blows my mind. Why does a fucking attorney listen to me? Like, so I still am kind of like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I am in this space and just, I started doing this kind of thinking like, oh, this would be cool. I've been told I have a voice for radio, blah, blah, blah. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, wow, I'm part of the Libertarian Institute and people know who I am. And, I go to Childeberg and people recognize my voice and I'm like, wow, you're like, okay.
I'll let it close on this one. And I one of my first episodes I actually commented about this, which was similar to Dave Smith. You listen to some people, and I think you need to strip yourself away from intellectuals and always giving them Kamala Harris as an example. She's an attorney. She's vice president, and you think, oh, could I do that? And you're like, yes, dumbasses could be attorneys. You don't have to be. There's nothing special. My dad was just an auto mechanic. I say just, but he just was a wealth of knowledge, and he taught me a ton of things. And sometimes those things in life are much more important. And just because I'm an attorney doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to have better arguments than other people. You present great thoughts and arguments. That's what I was saying about Dave Smith as well. So sometimes people just need to take down the veil and understand that no matter who they are, they might be able to present something that you can have worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate you exposing other people to my podcast, and it's great, and I appreciate everybody that listens. And the more y'all listen, the more comments I get, the harder I work, because I'm like, I can't let these people down.
Yeah, good for you.
So that's just the way it goes, man. It's gone from fun to a responsibility. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, that's the problem, right?
All right. Well, I'm gonna stop the recording.
Said you're just a slave. All your good intentions took you to your grave. Your pride is how they killed you. With the flag you wave just like a fool. They promised you a mountain, gifted you a stone. They demanded that you throw it into your neighbor's home, and then seize all that they worked for and give it to the throne just like a tool. Well, as we all just stand in line and glorify new ways of being cruel, it seems to me humanity is not something that they're teaching us in school. They dumbed us down all around, propaganda, their pollution. They set a cage up on the stage, a facade for all solution. They build a wall, block them all from this mental institution. It's insane. Now they're writing their own rule books and they're crossing all their T's. They're fashioning their people to all wear beggars' knees. If you want a clean drink of water, well, you must say pretty please. It's all a game. As we all just stand in line and justify these crimes done in our names, it seems to me authority and tyranny are both one and the same. just stand in line waiting for some kind of Robin Hood. Our liberty will never be until our right to freedom is understood. Thank you.